Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP and his girlfriend met online through a Discord server for a podcast. Their relationship blossomed over shared interests, especially bonding over the game Animal Crossing during the pandemic. However, he discovered she cheated on him with someone she met online. Heartbroken, he ended the relationship and sabotaged her job application, feeling betrayed. He's since moved on but struggles with trust issues. Now let's get into the story. I, 33 male, and my girlfriend, 28 female, met online through a Discord server for a podcast we both liked. There was a channel in the server to post pictures of your animals, and she fell in love with my dog before she fell in love with me. After I uploaded a lot of pictures of them, she sent me a DM and we started talking. I developed feelings for her before I even saw her. She did the same. I had been thinking about a girl I had never seen before, and it was driving me crazy. So I confessed my feelings for her, and she was very happy. We actually only lived about 5 hours away from each other, so we could try and form a relationship. We agreed to meet up after a few weeks of talking over video chat, and it felt like finally placing that last puzzle piece and making it whole. Then, the pandemic happened. It was really difficult for us to see each other in person, so we went back to our long-distance origins and spent our nights together on video chat. We did everything that a long-distance couple could do to spend time together, and it was fine. But it wasn't ideal. I have always been a big gamer. I followed a lot of news in the industry, and I always made sure I could buy the latest consoles and the newest hate games. So when the new Animal Crossing game came out at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was raving about it. It was such a fun way to get together with friends and do something virtually. My girlfriend hadn't been crazy about video games before Animal Crossing, but because I wanted to spend that time with her, I ended up buying her a Nintendo Switch with the game. We spent a lot of time together visiting each other's islands and playing the game. It was a very fun time for us, and I really cherish those moments we shared, even if it was in a video game. Now, my girlfriend was online a lot. She was laid off from her job and having a really difficult time finding a new one, so she spent a lot of time on the internet at home. I had actually convinced her to send an application to my place of employment because they were looking for remote workers. She applied and I promised to try to put a good word in for her. I knew that she had met some other people over the internet that she played Animal Crossing with, but I didn't know anything about them. I just expected them to be online friends and nothing else. Of course, in hindsight, I realized my girlfriend and I were online friends before we were together. I didn't have any reason not to trust her, so I didn't think that she would be talking romantically with another person online. A few weeks had passed and my girlfriend was sort of nudging me to update her on her application status at my job. When I checked on it, the hiring manager told me that they had received a lot of applications and they were still looking through them. They were keeping an eye out for hers, but they couldn't make any promises. I told her that and she seemed very disappointed by the news, but she was understanding overall. Not long after we had that conversation, we were online talking about a movie we were planning on watching together when I got a random notification on Discord. It was from an account I wasn't friends with, and we weren't in any mutual servers or anything like that. I had no idea who this person was, but they were claiming to know my girlfriend. I didn't say anything while I was on the phone with her because I wanted to see what this person was trying to get at. I humored them and started talking. They confessed to me that my girlfriend had been flirting with them online, and recently they had taken the next step in their relationship. I was curious about what that was, so I asked. He told me that he went to visit her, and they slept together. I was shocked by that news and I wasn't sure that I believed it. My girlfriend was normally very shy, and on top of that, the world had only been shut down for about 5 months by that point. We were still in the height of the pandemic, and it seemed like it would be irresponsible to just meet up with some random person you met online to sleep with them. I told them that they were lying and I thought it was a bad joke, but they sent me messages and pictures to prove it. They told me that they had no idea that I existed until they were at my girlfriend's house. Apparently, she felt really guilty after the fact, and she confessed to them that she was in a relationship with me. I couldn't deny the proof when I saw it. It was very clearly my girlfriend, and I had no way to excuse what the person was telling me. I was on the phone with her at the time, and just completely frozen. I didn't know what to say to her. I've never been a confrontational person, and having conversations like that was difficult for me, but I knew that I needed to end things with her. She cheated on me with some random person from the internet. Not only was that a breach of my trust, but it was extremely irresponsible given what was happening in the world at the time. I asked the man how they met, and he said that they had been playing Animal Crossing online with each other for a few weeks, and they had developed a connection with each other. They only lived about 45 minutes away from each other, and they had both been in lockdown for so long that they figured no harm would come of being with each other. I ended up telling my girlfriend that I had a bad headache and needed to get off the call early. I spoke to the other guy on Discord for a while after I hung up the phone to try and figure out all of the details. From the way he made it sound, it seemed like from the beginning of their relationship she was interested in pursuing him. I felt like I had been stabbed in the back by her. I had never been betrayed like that in a relationship, so I took it very hard. I didn't talk to her for a couple of days, and she kept spamming me with messages asking me about what was going on. All I could think about was how I needed to break up with her, but I didn't know how to do it. I went back to work the following Monday, and I ran into the hiring manager that I had been asking to look into my girlfriend's resume so often. I lied to her and told her to pull my girlfriend's resume because she found another job. Working with her wouldn't have been an option, even if she was going to be working remotely. I would still have to see her name in emails, see her in Zoom calls, and maintain a cordial relationship with her at work. I didn't think I could handle that. She broke my heart, and I didn't want to have to worry about seeing her in any capacity while I was at work. The hiring manager thanked me for letting her know and made a note to toss the resume when she came across it. Later that night, I realized that I needed to have a conversation with my girlfriend. We got on a call, and she was asking me if everything was all right because I had been very distant. Then I confessed that I knew what happened. She instantly broke down and apologized and tried to tell me that she knew it was a mistake, and she wished that she could take it back. Unfortunately, she couldn't take it back. She would never be able to undo what she did, and that was something she would have to live with. At the end of the call, I broke up with her. I felt like I really loved her, and she tossed aside our relationship as if it meant nothing to her. Coming back from something like that is really difficult. I stopped talking to her altogether, and I blocked her on everything that I could. After the unemployment benefits were taken away when things started getting back in order toward the end of the pandemic, I was curious to see if she had ever landed a job. From what I could gather when I looked online, she was still looking, and she was really struggling with maintaining her lifestyle on the low income she had. I know it makes me a bad person, but it really felt like karma. I could have gotten her job at my company without any issue, but she stabbed me in the back, so I sabotaged that. I knew that if she didn't regret cheating on me when it came to ruining our relationship, she would regret it because she lost out on a great job. It's been a couple of years since all of that happened, and I've moved on. I've dated a few other women, and I've had my share of trust issues, but I'm actively trying to work through them so I can have a healthy relationship in the future. Today's second story. In this story, a couple, formerly best friends, fell in love after years of friendship and married. They shared passions, including a desire to learn French in France. While there, the husband discovered his wife's affair with a classmate and their plans to cheat. He exposed them, resulting in their exam cancellations. Despite the wife's pleas, they divorced. The husband, hurt but resilient, focuses on rebuilding trust. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I used to be best friends before we married. We both met in college, but we became close friends about 3 years after we left college. My wife was going through a very tough season when our friendship started. She had recently lost her father to cancer, and around the same time, she caught her best friend with her fiancé. I can't explain how we got so close, but I remember we started talking. Walking one day and never stopped. For 2 years we were best friends and told each other stuff. I was always happy to have her around because I loved her aura. She was always so energetic and her laughter was heart-melting. Aside from this, my wife and I were very much alike. We had similar passions, loved the same sports, and had similar hobbies. It was almost like we were born to be with each other. As time passed, I realized I had fallen in love with my wife. So I boldly asked her out and she said yes. We ended up dating for 10 months and we married. Being married to my wife was fun initially because we were always eager to explore and try new things together. She has a very open mind and would jump on any idea I had. We didn't have any kids yet, but we made a solid plan to have kids after 3 years. While my wife worked as a secretary in a big pet store, I was a mechanic and worked in a car brand company. We were both actively planning for our future and a particular vision from when we dated. While we were dating, my wife and I agreed to learn at least 3 different languages before we grew old, and the first language on our list was French. We could have simply downloaded a language app, learned on YouTube, or taken an online language class. But my wife insisted that we travel to France to learn the language, feel the culture, and be in a class where a native French speaker would teach us. It sounded like a great idea, and since we love to explore, we started saving towards it. For 2 years, we put money aside every month for our France trip, and when we believed it was enough, we made our trip. It was our first time being in France, so you could imagine we were like children who had been to Disneyland for the first time. We loved everything we saw, and being around people who spoke French constantly motivated us to be serious about learning the language. We started classes the same week, since we had already checked out the school we wanted to enroll in before traveling to France. We were in a class of about 15 people who also wanted to learn the language, and it was so much fun. Our class was only meant to be for 3 months. My wife believed 3 months of learning directly from a French native would help us learn the basics of the language and speak it, and she was right. Living in an environment of majorly French speakers helped too. For the 3 months we lived in France, we had so much fun and enjoyed our stay there. We also had the opportunity to relate and mix up with other people and made a couple of friends. My wife was a very social butterfly, and she made friends like it was nothing. She even had more friends in our class than I did, and I didn't mind. I knew it was her personality and trying to find more people to practice the language with. Well, I was wrong. My wife had been involved with something way higher than trying to practice the language with her new friends. Towards the end of the class, we had a lot of fun. Our class, it was mandatory for everyone to take an examination, and we had successfully entered that phase. One day, while my wife and I were in her short-let apartment preparing for our exams that afternoon, her phone buzzed. She had left her phone on one of her textbooks and went into the room to sort out what she'd wear later. When I looked at her phone screen, I saw that the message was written in French, and I was impressed that my wife had reached the extent of getting messages in French. So, to test my French reading skills, I read the message to see if I could understand it, and that worked to a level. I couldn't understand the whole message because they were words that confused me. Meanwhile, I had understood something in the message that looked suspicious. So to be sure of what I had read, I used a language translator and was perplexed at what I read. Through translating the messages into English, I discovered that my wife was having an affair with one of her classmates. He had been her seat partner a couple of times, and they got along well. Not just that, they were also planning to cheat in the exam, and also cheat on me afterward. By that, I mean sleep together. I was so mad, and I felt betrayed. I could not even believe that my wife was having an affair with someone she barely knew for 3 months, and she chose to destroy our marriage and the memories and sabotage every plan we made for our future. After I got a grip on myself, I snapped the message with my phone, and immediately after I did that, my wife walked into the living room. I tried to control my emotions like most men said they did on this channel, but I couldn't. It was eating me up inside, and before I knew it, I confronted her and yelled at her. She tried to lie that there was nothing going on between them and that maybe I had misinterpreted the message, so I showed her the English translation, and she kept quiet. After staying silent for a few minutes, she said she could explain and was only trying to explore and have fun. I nearly exploded when she said that, but I had to stay calm and walk out of her. Immediately I left the house. I went straight to her school, and I showed the text message to the person I knew was in charge. When the text message reached the right people, all the previous exams my wife and her affair partner had written were automatically canceled. And since we had a couple more papers left before I returned to our country, I had to stay with one of the new male friends I made there till I wrote my last paper. After my last paper, I returned home before my wife. I avoided her the whole time we were in France, and I didn't take any of her calls or listen to the numerous voicemails she sent. When she returned home, she had met all her things on the front porch. Even at that, she still tried to beg me, and she claimed she and her AP had not done anything serious except kisses. At that point, I didn't care if they had done anything serious. Her intentions were all that mattered. We eventually divorced, but before we went our separate ways, my results came out and I aced it. As for my wife and her affair partner, they were told they could retake the class if they wanted, but that would be at the expense of another fee. She couldn't take another class because it took us 2 years to collaboratively gather that money and pay for our accommodation. It still hurts when I remember how we were so in love with each other, our plans and the kind of life we were building, but it's all for the best. For me, being single is better than being with a woman who jumps on any man she gets close to. I know I have moved on, but it will take a long time to trust a woman or date one. Today's third story. In this story, Opie recounts his nearly 4-year marriage, initially filled with love and effort. Devastation strikes when he discovers his wife's infidelity through old letters and photos hidden in a shoebox. Planning revenge, he exposes her affair during her high school reunion, initiating divorce proceedings. Despite the pain, he finds solace in ending the marriage and vows to avoid future relationships. Now let's get into the story. I was married to my ex-wife for almost 4 years, but unfortunately, we had to go our separate ways because she did the unthinkable. My ex-wife and I met at a business seminar in town. We were there to listen to a renowned business guest speaker, and coincidentally, we sat beside each other. Throughout the seminar, we occasionally talked about a couple of things, which mostly have to do with the things we learned, and after the seminar was over, we exchanged contacts. We started talking, and about a week later, we decided to go out for lunch. As we had lunch that day, I was puzzled at how intelligent she was and her passion for business, and after our first date, we saw each other more often. Eventually, we ended up dating because I fell in love with her, and 8 months later, we married. We were married for almost 4 years before I found out she had been making a fool out of me. I'd love to add that, while my ex-wife and I were married, there was nothing she wanted that I didn't give her. I was slashed still as a businessman and earned decent money. My ex-wife didn't own a business like mine. She worked for a business consultant firm and was earning well too. We had no kids because she said she wasn't ready, and I was okay with that. All through the 3 years of our marriage, I did my best as a good husband and even helped at home. I wanted more than anything for us to be happily married for as long as possible, offered to help in the kitchen, took her on surprise vacations, and did pretty much what a man would do to make the woman he loved happy. Even on my hectic and tired days, I made sure I went home early, never canceled on her, and most times I had to reschedule many things because I believed family was one of the most important aspects of life. Unlike other couples, my ex-wife and I barely fought. She was more of an extrovert, a very social butterfly, in the life of the party, while I was reserved to a level. So whenever we had a reason to argue, she was always at fault. And each time we were so close to fighting or arguing, I would always apologize because I wanted us to be at peace at all times. I know you all might think I did that as a weak man, but that's not why. I grew up in a very toxic environment. My parents were always fighting, and I did not want to replicate the same thing in my marriage. On our 3rd anniversary, we did a renewal of wedding vows, and almost 7 months later, I stumbled upon something that altered the rest of our marriage. That Saturday, I was cleaning the house, and I had every intention of cleaning our closet. My ex-wife and I shared a closet. She had been the only one cleaning it in the past, so I decided to take things out of the closet that day and thoroughly clean up. I started by taking things out of the closet, and once I was done cleaning and dusting, I tried to arrange and organize them again. While organizing, I mistakenly kicked open one of my wife's shoe boxes as I tried to move around, and many letters and pictures were scattered on the ground. At first, I was worried I kicked out one of her expensive shoes because she left the very expensive ones in a box, but after I saw the letters, I was relieved. Initially, I thought the letters were old letters from an old teenage lover, or maybe there were letters she had never sent, and I was curious to find out how foolish in love she was at that time. But as I looked at them closely, I noticed recently added letters, which piqued my curiosity. As soon as I got down to the fourth line of one of the recently added letters, I felt my lower stomach churn and my heartbeat increased, and as I got to the end, my world shattered. I was right. There were letters from an old lover, and it was her high school crush. The letter I read detailed one of their recent escapades. There were even photos of them lying under the sheets together. It wasn't just one letter, there were more of them, and one of them even talked about the night before our wedding and how they enjoyed each other in bed. I wanted to be sure of what I read, so I went through all the letters and realized their relationship had been going on, even while we were dating. Needless to ask if I was heartbroken, because I was beyond heartbroken. I was devastated and hurt, and in my 37 years on Earth, it was the second time a woman had hurt me so much. The worst part was that I never saw it coming and would never believe my wife would cheat. I don't know how she did it, because nothing was alarming about her. She still cared for me and the house and satisfied my bed needs, and I never suspected her or noticed anything fishy. I have watched a few videos on this channel where men say their wives changed suddenly or dressed differently, but with my ex-wife, there was no sign. Everything remained the same, and our love for each other grew over the years too. That same afternoon, she returned home and acted like everything was cool, but how I saw her changed. I tried to hide it, but it was not as easy as I imagined. It hurt so much that I loved her blindly, but she took my love for granted and cheated on me. The good thing was she was hosting her high school reunion, which was only a few days away. I had already scanned the letters and photos and intended to send them straight to her parents, but I got an idea from one of the stories I listened to here. As a part of their high school reunion, she created a slideshow of all her memories in high school, and I saw that as a perfect way to carry out my revenge. A night before her dear reunion, I secretly planted the letter and photos I scanned in her slideshow, almost at the beginning, and I waited for her to humiliate herself publicly. On D-Day, everyone gathered as planned, both from near and far, and they were all having a good time. At the venue, I saw her crush, and she exchanged a couple of smiles with him. Honestly, I almost lost it, but I didn't want to ruin my perfect plan. Eventually, the time for her slideshow came, and just as she was smiling at the screen and expecting to see another of her teenage hot girl pictures, the picture of her and her high school crush under the sheet popped up and her mouth dropped. She was so shocked, but it wasn't just her. Her friends and classmates were shocked too, and just as she was trying to wrap her head around what was happening, the last slideshow came with instruction from me, which read, "Don't come home tonight. We are getting divorced." Immediately she read that, she turned in my direction and ran towards me, but I walked out of the venue. Before I left, I could see the disappointment on the faces of her friends and classmates, and it appeased me. That night, she did not come home as I had instructed, but she kept blowing my phone with calls, text messages, and voicemails. One of her voicemails said she could explain, and it wasn't what I thought. The next day, I received a package I ordered. They were pillows and huge gift bags with the picture of her and her affair partner printed on them, and I sent them along with her stuff to her parents' house. I also dropped the letters and original pictures on their WhatsApp family group chat and exited the group. As expected, her parents tried to call, but I blocked their and my ex-wife's numbers too. When the divorce papers were ready, my lawyer reached out to her, and she signed them after delaying for a while. Although it's so painful, I'm glad we are not together anymore. Now I get why most people kick against the idea of getting married, and I think I might fall in love one day, but I'm done with getting married and repeating the cycle with unfaithful women.